host, Alex Garrett.
Well, thanks for joining us on a beautiful Friday. You know, tax day's around the corner, but let's forget about that for 1 second because it's a beautiful Friday. And right now I'm coming to you from actually SUNY Downstate. And thank you for all the prayers as my dad is continuing his hospital stay and in stable condition today. We'll keep praying for him that he continues to be in peace and comfort. But I wanted to get to this story because what if I told you and they say because it was 6 or more, a mass shooting, but another shooting that happened this week in downtown Nashville at the old, what do they call it? Old National Bank in Louisville, Kentucky, rather. The shooting in Louisville. What have I told you? This shooting is linked to something very, very popular. Football. What have I told you? That today, the family of the gunman who was actually shot down at the scene of Old National Bank will now have his brain, the family will now have the brain tested for CTE possibility. CTE, of course, is what is a result of concussion after concussion. Now, here's the thing. If it's found he had a chronic traumatic encephalopathy, if it's found he had a chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, then this could change the way background checks are done. Because to me, the background check only covers what we call mental illness and, I guess, institutionalization. But in my view, how they have not ruled that concussions should be part of the background check or the traumatic brain injury should be part of a background check, why that has to go into law and isn't already a thing that the FBI and what else? Associated with Firearms and Tobacco, AFT, have not looked at already, is a disgrace. These federal background checks should be including concussion and TBI, traumatic brain injury. Because why would you have somebody who had too many hits to the head holding a gun? You could say that's mental illness, but I think there's just a whole swath of mental illness. But yes, if a TBI concussion is not on the background check radar, it should be now. Especially if this is proven. Even if it's not. Maybe concussion history should be something that is looked at before a wacko can go and grab a gun and buy a gun. And for this is the first shooting, by the way, that I don't see much that has shifted from not only just the gun, but the person carrying the gun. This is the first shooting that really is saying, well, let's look at what's really happening inside the shooter's brain. That doesn't happen often. It's written off as, well, gun control needs to be strengthened. Or it's written off as, hey, guess what? He had a mental illness. He shouldn't have gotten it. Why did he get it? How did he get it legally? It's just written off. There's no real look inside the brain. That should change. So maybe this shooting in Louisville, Kentucky, by a former bank employee should and could be a watershed moment. Why is that, you ask? Well, because in this moment here, we're dealing with the reality of, guess what? Guess what? This guy is only a nut job But we're going to see if the concussions played a role into this act. And we're going to see if actually the brain of the human being carrying the object is why this happened. Maybe we should get the evaluation of other shootings, of other shooters' brains moving forward, so that there can be a stepping stone to prevention, or a workup of new background check laws to include the concussion and the traumatic brain injury. Governor Whitmer today actually unleashed new laws with the background checks in Michigan, calling it the Common Sense Gun Violence Prevention Bills. Universal background checks for all firearm purchases. And this is happening in Michigan. And it sounds reasonable. That, a firearm should be stored in a lockbox. That's pretty reasonable. In their own home. But this is more than just the gun here. This is a conversation about a shooter's brain. When have we heard about that? When has the conversation shifted to that mental side of things, beyond just saying, it could be mental illness, or we knew this guy had problems, or we knew this nut job wrote on social media? Did they ever look inside any of those brains and not just the Facebook post? Did they? Did they do that? Because see, if we can scientifically say, yes, concussions can cause people to do this, then maybe that should be on the background. Maybe this redefines the way we talk about gun control, shifting it from the object to the person, finally, so that all other people who have had concussions or TBIs don't make it as a recipient for a gun. And as I've said here in Times Square, they proudly say we're a gun-free zone. Thank God nothing has happened in Times Square in the quote-unquote gun-free zone. Thank God, because criminals don't make it a gun-free zone. Law-abiding citizens make it a gun-free zone. And we will never really have conceal and carry here. So really, if someone, God forbid, did that, it'd be a free-for-all, and I hate to say that. But maybe this shooting in Louisville, Kentucky can tell us once and for all, yes, it is the person that is responsible for the shooting, not the gun entirely. It is the brain of that person that drove him to shoot up a bank, his former employee, on Monday. Science will win here. And if science wins, then, if you say science needed the masking up and the mandating of vaccines, then science should say concussions and TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, should be on the list if it's not already, which I've Googled. It looks like there's not much there as to whether TBIs are part of the background check. There's been legislation proposed for such a thing. And if the CTE comes into fruition, then we should add it to the background check criteria. Because if someone's taking too many hits to the head, why should they be allowed to have a gun? It's bad enough, I gotta say this, it's bad enough we let the military keep their AR-15s after their service. That's a thing. And they've seen some crap and some shit on the battlefield that I think disqualifies them from carrying after their service, from continuing to carry an AR-15. Maybe a handgun, maybe something, if they so choose. But not an AR-15. And yes, we can talk about the AR-15 all day long. But the problem is they don't want to just go after the AR-15. They want to do sweeping. More than just the AR-15. They want to go beyond that. And that's what's the problem here. It starts there and it trickles down. And I really think people have the right to protect themselves from those who can get the AR-15 legally. Then just somehow prevent that sale. Especially if they have a concussion or a traumatic brain injury. This will tell a lot, and this could change the conversation after a shooting of mass devastation and mass casualty. This should change the conversation. And I'm glad the brain is going to be examined. For once, the focus is on the person holding this AR-15. That's a monstrosity in of itself. And for once, maybe we could say, okay, mental illness cannot be just broadened. It has to be scoped. List the different things with regards to mental illness that should be banned from getting a gun legally. Because these background checks are doing nothing right now. And they've got to. And they've got to. I can't believe it, for the first time, a shooting in the NFL and a football player. Well, I shouldn't say the first time, but a CTE now links football with a shooting? Fascinating stuff, if you ask me. I'm Alex Garrett. We'll talk to you later on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.